but yes. Hi everyone. Can some people turn on their cameras, please? Best would be everyone, but what to do? It's good to see some faces.
Yeah.
Okay, so how is everyone today? How are you all doing? Do you have any questions that we need to address at the beginning? First, some administrative stuff, if you have any questions. Yes, Wei.
Hi, Inka. To this
Hi.
class, I have one question.
Yes.
Why mental state what apprehend?
I did
What
not
is-
understand you.
Oh,
Is that only for me, or
sorry.
is that for all of you that you cannot hear her properly?
Yeah, it's for me too.
Couldn't hear her. Hi.
Okay. So, can you try again, Wei?
Okay. Lobenberg thought that mental states are what apprehends, right?
Yes, they have objects.
Oh, maybe problem.
Maybe you can type it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And while Wei is typing her question, and I think it's something for about today's class. So let's go first a little bit back in time. First of all, do you have any questions about administrative things, about the paper that is due very soon, or the exam that is coming up very soon? So maybe I should just mention those things. So the paper is due, as you can see, in your assignments tab. It's not opening. Okay, the paper is due on the 2nd, so on Friday. Please hand them hand the papers in time. If there's an emergency, you can ask me for an extension, but it needs to be an emergency, right? And there's a hard deadline. Like, I'm not going to accept anything past the 6th. If you're not asking for an extension, I will take points off. If you hand it in after the 2nd. And then there's a hard deadline for everyone, unless you have the doctor's certificate or something, from the 6th onwards. So you cannot hand it in afterwards. And then another thing that is coming up that's important is the midterm. So if we look at the syllabus, we're now in week 5. And the readings are, of course, changing a little bit. Week 6 is still normal. And week 7, on Friday, we have the midterm exam. So everything that we covered until, say, mid of week 7, from everything covered in the first 6 weeks will be included in the midterm exam. So probably you want to keep reviewing well, and then but it's an open book exam, so just make sure that your notes are all complete and that you know where everything is to be found. So it's an open book exam, which means that you have your references, but if you don't know what we're talking about, then no book will help you, right? So you need to know where the details are that you need to find. And open book exams are always, of course, you're expected to know more in an open book exam than you're expected to know if you have to have memorized it, right? So you need to show more of your understanding of the material. You need to be really precise with your terminology and with your list and so on. So that's kind of important to know. Yeah. So please make sure that you are familiar with all the the material that we covered, and your notes are really as complete as possible. I mean, you have the PowerPoint presentations as well, but you have to know where what is, otherwise you don't know that it even exists, that information, right? Good. For the paper, I hope that you're already progressing well on it. Yeah. All right, Samir?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, how much time will we have to write the midterm? Like,
Yeah, you will have 24 hours. So it shouldn't take you 24 hours to write the exam. It should be manageable in 2 hours if you're well prepared. If you're unprepared, it might take you 5 weeks, right? But so if you're well prepared, it should take you around 2 hours, or maximum 2 hours, maybe less because the midterm. But the exam will be open for 24 hours. So I'll open it Friday morning, and then it will close 24 hours after that, so that everyone has a chance to write it at one point during the day for all time zones.
all right, thank you.
You're welcome. And we won't have. Hey, that was my phone. And we won't have class on that day, so that you can use the usual class time to write your exam. I'll pick up my phone. So, yes. I think everything else should be fairly straightforward and clear by now. You have any other questions? If not, then we can move on to content. So, Ute, yes?
Yeah, but that was about content. Is it okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, now we move on to content.
I didn't quite understand on the paragraph 213. They are all cause, potential, or a seed? Or what's the difference between the different classes? That's what I didn't understand. Is my question maybe not clear? What is the difference between the apprehending an object and the other one being, I mean, why are they grouped in 666 if finally all 18 of them are cause, potential, or seed?
Well, they're all. I'm still looking for the passage.
Sorry, my question was
Um,
clear, but
Well, they're elements in terms that they all function as seeds, as causes, and so on. So they're all elements. And then we divide them. It's a classification into 18 different types.
right.
So, and because we have this 3 times 6, like we might think that the objects are different than the sense faculties and the consciousnesses, but they all have a similarity in terms of being the seed cause and so on. And like that's why they're all together, like they're all the elements, they're all cause, potential, and seed in these ways that are explained, and then that makes them elements, and then we just classify them into different kinds.
So that's the definition that pertains to everything up to what we are still doing right now.
Yeah, all the elements.
Okay, thanks.
So the elements is a different way of breaking things down, right? So we had the aggregates, that's one way of breaking things down, and then we have the elements and the sense sources, and that's all like they're all fairly connected and included in each other, but this one looks at the way that that they're all causes, seeds, and potentials. Just relax. Cat. Yeah, so that's the definition of how we look at those kinds of phenomena as according to their function. Okay, okay, why mental states are what apprehended, not are what is apprehended. The mental states, so sensation and perception and formation, they also they arise with the cognition, right? So they have a focus. They do apprehend the like it's a way of apprehending an object. That's why they apprehend it and not apprehender. That's why they apprehender and not apprehended. Like the phone, for example, as being form, is something that we look at. And then it's also the mental state of sensation that focuses on the phone. So that also apprehends the object, right? Or perception, like looking at the phone, then there are these identify the characteristics and so on. So the mental states, they also have an object of focus. They're also perceiving the object in a certain way. Like the way that we defined mind and mental states was as the main mind or the main minds being that which identifies or apprehends the mere essence of the object, so phone, and then the mental states are that which apprehend the specific characteristics. So different classification, different kinds of things that arise, like focusing on that object. Does that make sense?
Yes, so here in Kala, here mental states only refers to sensation, perception, and formation.
What's included in the formations?
Sensation, perception, and formation. These three are mental states here refers to, right?
But all the other mental states are included in formation.
So I feel a little bit confused, like disturbed emotion, right? Root disturbed emotion and 20, 20, how should I say? And another 20, like a disturbed emotion, and also like a virtuous emotion. This, how can we define this? What apprehend? What apprehend? It's very strange. Very strange.
Well, the anger, for example, is something you develop towards or aversion. Anger aversion is something you develop towards an object, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that stands on its own. It's the aversion against an unpleasant object. So
Yeah,
they never stand. They never stand by themselves. They're something like how we relate to the experience, to the appearance.
Yeah. So
Right.
I think maybe mental state refers to something co-current happened, act or process co-current with mind, but not apprehender.
But the way that we define the mental states, I mean, where that they apprehend the specific characteristics, like that something is something you have aversion against. It's a way to characterize the object. So it's not that which you have only apprehended an apprehender. It's not that yet that's so it's the object, and that develops then that it's apprehended. The essence of the object is apprehended by the main mind, and then the mental states also apprehend that same object. We said the concurrent means that it focuses on the same object through the same faculty at the same time, and so on. So in the classification of apprehended and apprehender, it's the objects that are what is apprehended, and then the the consciousnesses, which are the main mind, and the mental states, which are part of the mental objects, they apprehend. They're the apprehender. That doesn't mean that they will not end up as an object themselves later.
Okay,
Right.
Thank you.
Because of the gradual way that something moves from being an object to being then the cognition or the consciousness arises, then the sense consciousnesses then turn into the faculty for the mental objects to be perceived, right?
Lasso to JTA.
Does it make sense now? Really?
A little bit makes sense.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
Okay.
I have a quick question. So all of the mental factors are included within mental consciousness in this scheme. Is that right? So like anger and attachment. So mind consciousness, mind faculty, and mental objects. So
where do they belong?
That's my question. I think the consciousness. But this is what you were just talking about, which I guess I didn't follow.
Yes. Ooh, I have a feedback. Okay. Now it's gone. I think Bill, I have to. Yeah. Thank you. So I think what we should be doing is looking at something here. We're already in the middle of this week. I would like to go back, like after this question, I would like to go back quickly and see whether anything has been unclear from last week. But so can you see it? No, didn't work. No, it worked. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. I'm working with 2 screens and it gets more and more confusing. So we have the 18 elements. They start with the like faculty elements and then the object elements and then the consciousness elements, right? And so the faculties are clear, right? The sense faculties are clear, the sense objects are clear, and the 6 types of consciousness are clear. Those are exactly as we saw them in the aggregates. Now, what is a little bit complicated are the mind faculty and the mental objects. The mind faculty is just the faculty, like the source for the ruling condition for the mind consciousness to arise. And that's an aspect that that is labeled this way of the consciousnesses themselves. So if we see an object, so if the pen perceiving eye consciousness arises, the first moment, that's the eye consciousness of that moment of pen, right? And then there comes another moment of pen and another moment of eye consciousness. But let's talk about this one moment. There's one moment of pen, and together with one moment of faculty, there arises a moment of consciousness, the pen perceiving eye consciousness. Now, that's a moment. That's just a momentary experience, right? It's a momentary awareness or cognition. As soon as that ceases, arises a second moment, which is then the moment in which there is the mind faculty, which is the having ceased of the and pen perceiving eye consciousness, and then with that as its support, as its ruling condition, arises then the mind consciousness. So it's kind of labeled in this way because we need a faculty. We say that when the eye consciousness ceases, then the second moment, that's the faculty, that's a cause for the mind consciousness to arise. So in that sense, the faculty needs to be simultaneously present with the consciousness. Just a little note here: the subsequentiality of cause and effect, or a simultaneous, that's a whole other discussion. But the way that we looked at it here now is like we have the faculty and the object, and then at the same like they need to be present at the same time as the for the consciousness to arise. It's the Satantrika who then changed that. So anyways, so that's the mind faculty. It's just the second moment of the eye consciousness, when the eye consciousness of the pen has ceased, or ceasing, that's the function then that allows for the mind consciousness to arise as the ruling condition. And then the mental objects, I haven't made this pretty yet. The colors are still off, but I think it will explain it. Anyway, so the mental objects are then divided into 7 or 16 types, depending on the kosha or the samuchaya. So it's this mental objects element that's really always the complicated one. So these are the objects only of the mind consciousness. So like form, visual form is the object of the eye consciousness, in the same way the mental objects are the objects of the mind consciousness, right? And so if we have these 7 types in the Abhidhamma Kosha, sensation, perception, and formation belong to that, right? The mental states. They condition things, and they serve as the basis, or they're the cause then for further conceptualization and further engagement and so on. Also, we have imperceptible form and cessation due to discrimination, cessation due to not due to discrimination and space. So these 3 unconditioned things. And then we have in the Abhidhamma Samuccaya, we have the same ones, but we're adding a few more mental objects. Are the 5, not only imperceptible form. So exactly what we have seen in the aggregates. And then unconditioned things are 8 types of unconditioned things. And it's sensation, perception, and formation that can be a little bit problematic at times. So they're not the main mind. So they're not the consciousnesses themselves. It's not the mind consciousness itself. It's the mental state which arises with it and then colors stuff, right? We saw that virtue, non-virtue, and neutrality depend on which kind of mental states are present or arise with the cognition, but they also are the mental objects then. So since it includes sensation, perception, and formation, here the formation includes then the concurrent formations, so the rest of the mental states. So we call them the 3 mental states, because formation includes then all the other mental states.
Thank you. So this, what you're showing us now, you'll be able to give us next week, early next week or so on.
I think these 3 slides I will actually give you today, because that's what Lopanla said is important for you to be aware of as we're classifying. And so maybe the charts will just make it a little bit easier for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that whole thing clear now? Do you have a question? Hilda?
I have a question about today. When we were talking about elements that are virtuous, unvirtuous, or neutral. Why I didn't really understand why smell, taste, and tangible objects are neutral, whereas the eye consciousness, for example, can be accompanied with a virtuous or unvirtuous mental state. Can you explain that?
So, can you see it? Or should I make it bigger?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So when we talk about virtuous, unvirtuous, and neutral in terms of the elements, then the consciousnesses are easy to explain, because it's according to the mental states. They color the consciousness is. So if there is if I see the phone, and I have attachment to the phone, then that's I perceive the phone, but with it arises the mental state of attachment, right? And so then the whole cognitive process that is happening is an unvirtuous one. If I see something, like if I have the phone and non-attachment, a mental state of non-attachment arises with it, because I really don't care. No, the opposite actually of attachment. Then that would be a virtuous mental state, because we're trying to develop non-attachment, right? A virtue. So in that way, depending on which of the mental states, whether it's virtuous mental states or the afflictive state mental states, the root afflictions as well as the secondary afflictions, depending on which of them arise together with the perception of the object, then it will be accordingly virtuous or non-virtuous, or neutral if it's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. Now, the thing about visible form and sound was that they can be virtuous or non-virtuous or neutral. Most of them are neutral. Most visible forms are neutral. Like the table is neutral in itself. It's not a positive thing or a negative thing in itself. But since the body is also part of the form element, when through a good motivation we do physical actions like prostrations, then this is an expression that's something we see as visible form. It's a physical action, and so that also becomes virtuous. Or if we beat someone out of anger, that's also then non-virtuous. But the table, or when I just sit without positive or negative motivation, that's neutral. So that's just, it's colored by the intention that goes before it, right? If you have a good intention, then whatever you do or say becomes virtuous. So only in that sense, form and sound can be virtuous or non-virtuous as well. Otherwise, just normal form does not have any value to it. It's not positive or negative, right? It's just a table. That's just a phone. So it doesn't have an inherent virtue or non-virtue to it. But whenever it's whenever there are virtuous or non-virtuous mental states that come along with something, so with the consciousnesses, then they can be virtuous or non-virtuous. So we see actually most of the, it always depends on the mental states, whether an action that we do is virtuous, or if just most of it is mental anyways, right? So the idea of virtue and non-virtue, the strongest aspect is always the mind, because that's what motivates then the physical and verbal actions. And that's actually something that we see when we talk about formations. When we say formations, it's that which forms then future karma. So the mental states are that which motivates and is the pushing factor for accumulating karma, because it's the mental states that arise with the perception of the object that then color all future, like all our engagement with whatever it is. But did I answer your question with the mind?
Yeah, kinda, but can't you be attached to a smell or a taste or thing like that?
Yeah, but that's the attachment that arises together with the consciousness. It's not the object itself that's negative or positive. It's the mind relating to that object.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Hey, Ute, I think you had your hand up again in between.
Yeah, I was just trying to sort out the number of these all unconditioned things, because there are the two cessations in space, and there are the three forms of suchness: virtue, non-virtue, and neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the two cessations. That makes 8.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have 8 unconditioned and 8 conditioned mental objects.
Okay. So they are added to the sensation, perception, formation, and to the 3 aggregates. So that makes 16. Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at the chart that I have, the 2 charts that I have here, so the Abhidhamma Kosha is more basic. It has sensation, perception, formation, and imperceptible form as the 4 conditioned things.
Mm-hmm.
And then it has the 3 types of unconditioned things, the 2 types of cessation and space. So the 4th one, imperceptible form, goes back to how we spoke about the 11th type of resultant form. Right? Mm-hmm. So we said that the kosha only presents the imperceptible form as the 11th type of form, and the Abhidhamma kosha, the Abhidhamma Samuccaya, then has these 5 types of form that are mental objects. Deduced form, spatial form, imperceptible forms, imagined forms, and mastered forms. Mm-hmm. That's what we saw in the form aggregate. Mm-hmm. So it's the mental objects, 5 times of form that are mental objects, plus the 3 mental states that are conditioned things that are only the object of the mind consciousness, not of the sense consciousnesses. Mm. And then we have in the Abhidhamma Samuccaya, we have the 3 types of suchness, the 2 types of serenity, the 2 types of cessation, and space. So the 3 kinds of suchness and the 2 types of serenity come on top of the list of the kosha. Mm. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. So Lucia has a major request. Which of the lists do you want to review?
All of them. I don't like. I'm having a pretty hard time following when we speak about, because it's like usually we go through the same pattern of like many things apply to different aspects, like mental objects or mind consciousness. And I was having, like, what you just did with the previous list really helped me out quite a bit, like actually seeing it, because I'm pretty fond of lists, but these lists go on and on and on. So I don't even remember where it started. So I get like, then I don't even know if we're talking about the first thing that we were talking about, if this is just a separate thing. And then I got particularly lost when we were talking about the elements that are experienced or present in the different realms, because we were saying that it's like the defiling aspects of the last 3 elements. So I'm a bit confused about that. Like, can we go through that a bit?
Okay, I didn't make the slide for that yet. So let's change. Okay, who has a helicopter over their head?
It was me. It was me.
So yes, we always need to come back. Okay, let's keep looking at the. Let's keep looking at this. So let's keep looking at these, right? This is really the main chart that we need to keep in mind right now. These are the 18 elements, and we're asking ourselves which of these elements are present in the different realms, or which are obstructive, which are visible, which ones are virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral, like all of these different questions, different ways of grouping them, which actually gives us more of an insight of how we understand them, right? This is really something that is very typical for the Abhidharma and what we mean with these classifications. We have the list, but then we see how they fit together, how we can group them into different things, which functions they fulfill, and so on, like how they relate to each other. So the 18 elements. So this one is the important section, and then our obstructive paragraph 2.19 said, in the desire realm, all the 18 elements are present. In the form realms, there are 14 elements, excluding the elements of odor and taste and of the nose and tongue consciousness. In the formless realms, there are the aspects of the last 3 elements. Actually, this defiling, leave it out for now, because that's not, we didn't talk about the defiling. It's an addition from the translator, but I would be cautious. So the way that we saw it was all of these 18 are in the desire realm, because beings in the desire realm have those experiences, like that exactly describes our field of experience, right? In the form realm, it says the nose and the tongue faculty fall away, and as well as the nose and the tongue consciousness. No. The smell, taste, and the nose and the tongue consciousness. The faculties are there because we need to look pretty. The gods in the form realm need to look pretty, and they need to speak nicely. So they and there's a whole discussion in the reading for this week about between the Vaibhashikans and the Sautrantikans on why this is necessary or not, including other organs that are also discussed. So I don't know what the Vaibhashikans' obsession with these other organs was, but well, so because there's no attachment to smell and taste anymore, they can be reborn in the form realm, and then they don't have the consciousnesses for those either. They don't arise. They just simply don't arise, those consciousnesses, right? Because there's no attachment, there's no focus on a sound and smell and taste, and there's also no apprehension of those. So that probably has to do with the fact that the meditator who practices the dhyanas, is actually living of samadhi, right? That might have to, I'm not sure, but it might have to do with the sustenance of samadhi, that there's no more attachment. And then we have this last one, the formless realm. And in the formless realm, there are only aspects of these last three: the mind faculty, mental objects, and mind consciousness. And that has to do with how mind consciousness arises. So the formless realm is free of location and any kind of form. So the form aggregate included these 10, right? These are all the form aggregate. Not only visible form, but all the other forms too. So these all fall away. And there's no body, there's no environment, it's just a mental, it's a state of serenity or meditative absorption. And so because none of these are there, because then of course also the consciousnesses do not arise. The sense consciousnesses, because they don't have objects, they don't have faculties, so no sense perceptions. And the mind consciousness, what did I do? The mind consciousness can arise or arises with based on the mind faculty. So that can be any of these six, the cessation of any of these six consciousnesses. So when it momentarily arises and ceases, right after ceasing of any of these, that can be the mind faculty which arises, is the ruling condition for the mind consciousness, right? So only the mind faculty, which is related to mind consciousness, can arise in the formless realm, because these do not appear. These don't arise. And mental objects can also just be those kinds of mental objects. For example, when we talk about the sensation, it can only be the sensation, the mental state that arises together with the mind consciousness. It cannot be the sensation of the eye consciousness, right? So usually the mental objects include all the the sensations that arise concurrent with any of the consciousnesses. But right now, in the formless realm, because these do not arise, then the mental objects, the sensation, for example, can also be only the sensation that arises with the mind consciousness. And then mind consciousness is clear, like it can either arise following any of the sense consciousnesses, or we can be obsessed mentally with something. So that would then also again be that. Actually, they don't have a lot of obsession. If you look at the explanation of the formless realm, it's pretty neat. Kind of boring, and we don't want to get stuck there, but they don't have all the usual mental engagement happening. So it's only the aspects of the formless realms. Taking the own meditative absorption as the object, really, the own meditative experience as the object, that's then, yeah, the mind consciousness. That would. So is that clear, Lucia?
Yes, thank you. That was
Okay.
a lot clearer.
But that was something from today or yesterday, and you were saying you had a lot of trouble with the lists, like all the lists. So
Yes, because I got then a bit confused also about which ones have concepts, because I mean I was writing it down and then I was rereading it, and what I wrote, like, it kind of doesn't really make that much sense. Like, or at least I don't get what I try to write with that. So I'm not completely sure, like the ones that are with concepts that were the subcategory of the mental faculty and the mind consciousness. And only one aspect, like when they say aspect, I'm not really sure, like if that's just taking a part. Yeah.
It just
But
means
which
it's not all of them.
Okay.
So for that, you then always have to look at this list.
Okay.
So especially with the mental, when it's about the mental objects, most of the time it says it's an aspect of the mental objects, right? And then you look at these and see which one fit and which one don't.
Okay, exactly. So in this, yeah. Okay.
And can also
I'm sure I
give
had
you
another question, but I'll try to find. I'll try to find where I wrote it down, because if it was from yesterday, I need to find it in the notes, so I'll come back to it.
Yeah. And probably it's also part of last week, because I like you said it a couple of times. So, but you should have that presentation. Maybe that fills out your your missing lists or your confusing lists. And I've also updated the outline. So that probably gives you a way to classify where we are. If we are going over like 50,000 of the similar things, you need to know you need to know precisely where we are in the outline, and then it's clear what the bigger picture is.
Yeah, that's very useful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll try to keep updating it because we're moving along quicker now. So I'll add the sense sources now too. Okay, Stefan.
Can I ask a question about Arhats and Pratyeka Buddhas?
Sure, maybe I can answer it.
I was wondering that which form do they, which realm do they belong to? Are they in the formless realm after they die? Because they have subtle grasping still, I believe.
Yeah, but they're the world transcending. So the three realms are the three realms of existence. Once the karma for the formless realm runs out, one is reborn in the desire realm, or actually gradually one decreases, cascading down into the desire realm. So that's all samsara. The Arhats and Pratyeka Buddhas, they have some they haven't eliminated the obscuration of the cognitive obscurations. So they haven't realized the selflessness of phenomena / not completely. But that does not make them be part of samsara ever again, right? It's just, so they have eliminated all afflictive emotions and all afflictive obscurations with the realization of the selflessness of person. So they could hang out like that forever. And the idea for the Vaibhashika, from the philosophical idea about this, or from the perspective, is that once nirvana is realized, once arhatship is obtained, there's still the remainders of the defiled aggregates, so the form aggregate, right? So the body is still there, which is still defiled. And then once that runs out, that's the last bit of remainder of karma that they still have, then they just achieve paranirvana, which is then the arhatship without remainder, meaning there's nothing left. They just, it's, the example is like a candle that is blown out or that runs out. If the wax or the butter or the oil runs out, then the candle just dies, right?
So they just cease to exist.
Yeah. And then from the Mahayana perspective, they don't cease to exist. They rest in cessation until the Buddha wakes them up and makes them re-engage. But actually, they do not need to work on their afflictive emotions again. So when we look at the, like they need to realize the selflessness of phenomena. So they are they still have to work on their cognitive obscurations, but their afflictive obscurations are completely eliminated. So there are different ideas on where on the path they then jump in. But definitely they're already world transcending. So like there are different opinions. Some say that they start with the path of seeing, and others say that they start with the path of accumulation, but without obscuration. So they need to, like, it's a weird thing. They don't have to deal with the same problems on the path of accumulation as beings that go directly into the Mahayana path would deal with. And so in terms, and in terms of the afflictive obscurations, they're actually better off than all the bodhisattvas up to the 7th bhumi, because the bodhisattvas on the bhumis, they're still trying to eliminate the afflictive obscuration, the co-emergence afflictive obscurations, and only on the pure bhumis they're gone. So the pure bhumis are 8 upwards, and so it's an interesting topic. Where do the arhats fit when they start practicing on the Mahayana path? But but in the path of the Shravakas, actually they go through the dhyanas, not being reborn in the form realm, but like there's a huge focus on the practice of the dhyanas, which you don't find in the same extent in the Mahayana. So it's past these meditative absorptions, transcending those, then they become stream enterers. And then once returners, non-returners, and arhats. But it's through the practice of the dhyanas, or the accomplishment of the dhyanas. I think roughly we can say it that way. Okay. We did not talk about last week. Ute, did you have another question?
Yes, I have a problem with, within the elements, so we have the 6 consciousnesses, including the mind consciousness, and then afterwards comes the mind element, which is the mental faculty following cessation of the 6 cognitions. So it could also be the case that this would follow a mind consciousness?
Yes.
Cessation?
We keep thinking, right? So for another moment of mind consciousness to arise, like it can follow either a sense cognition, so I can see pen and then start thinking about the pen, second moment. And then if I keep conceptualizing, if I keep thinking about it, I'm not. It's not caused by the pen anymore. It's using the previous moment of mind consciousness, right? It's all mental at that point. So actually, in some presentations, it's object, and faculty, then the sense consciousnesses. The second moment is then mind conscious, like first moment of consciousness, then sense consciousness. Second moment is mind consciousness. That is still non-conceptual. Third moment of mind of consciousness, which is the second of mind consciousness, the second moment of mind consciousness. That's then when we start conceptualizing. Because that one would still take this one as its direct object. It's a direct perception, a non-conceptual perception. But that then is just a conceptualization of the previous one. And so then we can go on. Then we can obsess about something for the entire day.
which then would be mind element. No?
Yes. So the ceasing of the mind of this one, of the first moment of mind consciousness, then is the faculty that makes the second moment of mind consciousness arise. The second moment, the cessation of the second moment of mind consciousness gives then rise to the third moment of mind consciousness, and so on. So the mind faculty thing is a little bit of a weird thing. It's really just the coming to an end of the previous moment. So it's often given as the example of how this causation works is when one ceases, so we have one moment, as that one moment ceases, the other moment comes into being. So, and with this functionality, like that the cessation of the previous moment gives rise to the later moment, like the scales. That's the faculty. That's the ruling condition for the mind, for the next moment of mind consciousness to arise.
And that's mental cognition. That's synonymous, or I mean, it's the same term, or because this mind element thing.
I mean, they're all the mind faculty. So the mind element is not something that exists apart from the consciousnesses, right? It is part of the cognitive process. But so it is, in a way, it is the cessation of consciousness or cognition. The way to understand consciousness and cognition, I wrote it this morning. It's quite synonymous, and we've already seen that they're used quite synonymously. When I speak about a specific instance of consciousness, that's one cognition, right? That's the cognition. I cognize the pen, like one moment of pen. That's one moment of consciousness. But cognition is, as the Tibetan word cheba, can be a noun and a verb. Yeah. I cognize, and that's the cognition of the pen, right? I cognize the pen, or it's the cognition of the pen. Mm-hmm. So, but that doesn't mean anything else, but that one moment of eye consciousness that perceives a pen, that apprehends the pen, arises.
Okay. But it could also, but in place of the pen, it could also be a thought that arises.
Yes, and that would then mind consciousness.
Okay.
So my lunch apprehending mind consciousness is now just a memory. So that's just an image that I have in my mind. That would be the mind. That would be the mind consciousness.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, we're out of time. It's daytime, so many of you might have classes. My cat is cuddling with my computer mouse. So yeah, you have classes, you have things to do and things to study. So I'll let you go now. If you have any further questions, if anyone, I can stay for a little bit longer, but most of you might need to go. So see you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Inka.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I might have not seen a message. Okay. Just said mail. Helpful. Good.
What's the text? What's the name of the text of this week's reading? Abhidharma, and there's a
Kosha Basha.
Does it mean commentary, or what does it mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just means commentary.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. But it is Vasubandhu's auto commentary. So
is there a dictionary that's for the Sanskrit on the internet, something?
There are tons of Sanskrit. Even the normal apps, even the Tibetan dictionary, or like, yeah, several of the dictionaries include some Sanskrit terminology.
Okay. Thanks.
Otherwise, there's the Monia Williams if you really want to go Sanskrit English, but so there's some online.
Mon? Can you repeat the name?
Wait a second. Something. What do you mean? The presentation? I recorded the entire class now. The entire review class.
No, Gela is your presentation now. I try to find it, but I cannot find it now.
This one that I'm sharing sharing right now. Yeah, that's the one. That's the one for next week. But I will post these slides, these 3 slides. I'll post them straight away because they might be helpful.
Yeah, Gela, because I'm working in 18 elements, so I saw your presentation. So Gela can share with us. Can Gela share this presentation for me?
Sorry, I didn't understand you.
May I get this presentation?
Yes, I will post at least these slides below in the review below the recording of this review class. Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Inka. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, Gela.
Good night.